ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي. All literature lovers who love to read books and stories, this one is for you. Now I'm going to show you just one example from the Qur'an on how the Qur'an storytelling follows a complete set of rules which follows along in the entire story. So I'm going to show you from the story of Moses and Pharaoh and the magicians. When the magicians came to the Pharaoh, in chapter number 7 verse 113, they said, and the magicians came to Pharaoh, they said, indeed for us is a reward if we are the predominant. Indeed for us is a reward if we are the predominant. However, the same story in chapter number 26 verse 41, what do the magicians say? When the magicians arrived, they said to Pharaoh, is there indeed for us a reward if we are predominant? Now look at the difference. Here they're making a claim, indeed for us is a reward. But in chapter number 26, they're asking, is there indeed for us a reward? So now you see, what I want to show you is the rule that in chapter number 7, there is the domination of Pharaoh is a bit less. But in chapter number 26, if the Pharaoh is shown to be more dominant, because they have to question him instead of making a claim, right? They have to question him. They have to place a request. And so I want to show you this rule throughout these two stories. In chapter 7, throughout the story, you will see the lack of domination of Pharaoh. And in chapter 26, throughout the story, you will see the domination of Pharaoh. So let me show you. Let's start from chapter 7, where there's lack of domination. You see, the story starts by saying, then we sent after them Moses with our signs to Pharaoh and his establishment, right? Both are included. But in chapter 26, where Pharaoh dominates, it says, go to Pharaoh and say. It doesn't talk about the establishment, only Pharaoh alone. Again, chapter 27, with the lack of domination of Pharaoh, it says, Moses, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he starts talking first. He says, Moses said, Pharaoh, I am a messenger from the Lord who's obligated not to say about Allah except the truth. Then Pharaoh says, if you have come with a sign, bring it. But in chapter 26, where Pharaoh dominates, go to Pharaoh, say this. Pharaoh first starts saying, Pharaoh said, did we not raise you among us as a child and you remained among us for years? First Pharaoh talks, and then Musa alayhi salam says, I did it then while I was of those astray. Then he talks, subhanallah. Chapter 7, then another portion from verse 107 onwards, with Pharaoh doesn't dominate much. In chapter 7 verse 107, when Musa alayhi salam shows the signs, the Moses threw his staff and he drew out his hand. It is the eminent people, said the eminent among the people of Pharaoh, indeed this is a learned magician who wants to expel you from your land. But in chapter 27, which Pharaoh's domination is shown, after Musa alayhi salam, in verses 32 onward, Musa alayhi salam shows the miracles. Musa threw his staff, he drew out his hand. It is Pharaoh who spoke. Pharaoh said to the eminent ones around him, indeed this is a learned magician, he wants to drive you out of your land, subhanallah. Then in chapter 7, when Pharaoh doesn't dominate much, the same portion I showed you in the beginning, and the magicians came to Pharaoh, they said, indeed for us, there is a lack of domination of Pharaoh, indeed for us is a reward. He said, yes, and moreover you will be among those made near to you. This is what Pharaoh replies. But in chapter number 26, where Pharaoh dominates, and they ask, is there indeed for us a reward? Pharaoh says, yes, and indeed you will then be of those near to. He puts a condition, his domination. That's why, because he's dominating. Here he doesn't put a condition. Here he does not dominate. He says, and moreover you will be. But in Surah Shu'ara, he says, you will then be of it. It's as though he's placing his condition, because he's dominating. And finally, the last portion, the last section I'll show you, is when the magicians and Musa alayhi salam, they have the competition. In chapter 7 verse 115, since Pharaoh isn't dominating that much, what happens? He said, throw, and when the magicians, they threw, they bewitched the eyes of the people and then struck in terror into them and presented a great feat of magic. So their magic is being praised. But in chapter 26, when Pharaoh dominates, look what the magicians do. So they threw their ropes and their staffs, and instead of praising the magic, they said, by the might of Pharaoh, indeed it is we who are predominant. Subhanallah, they mention Pharaoh. Subhanallah, look at the beauty of the Qur'an. Just one single change. Indeed for us is a reward. They're dominating. But where Pharaoh dominates in chapter 26, is there indeed? The entire story follows the same theme of Pharaoh's domination or lack thereof. Subhanallah, this is Qur'an. That's why these are not called verses. These are actually ayat, signs, pointing to the fact that this book came from a divine source. Subhanallah. This is the beauty of the Quran. Storytelling here, particularly storytelling. That's what I'm trying to show you. Subhanallah. Can this be anything but from a divine source? Think about it. Share this with others, especially those who love literature. Share it with us so that they know what's inside the Quran. It's not just mere storytelling or stories of the past. These are signs of God showing that this book cannot be just random. These are not just random words. They're pointing to an intelligent source. Subhanallah. Share this with others. Share the message. Support this cause. And subscribe for more miracles, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.